So John McCain is dead and Jonathan Masters lives on, okay? My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you! There's an exclamation point at the end. This is Donald the Turnip, Jan Fuhrer. He is trying to, bury the hatchet that he never actually buried. There was a feud between John McCain and Donald Trump, but now that he's dead, yeah, he's going to be a saint, right? Everybody's going to talk about him as if he was the greatest human being ever. And he was a strong senator, and he did oppose Donald in some meaningful, at least that one, the healthcare thing. But before I get onto John McCain, Donald Trump, what a psychopath. What a fucking psycho. It starts out okay, but he ends, our hearts and prayers are with you. An exclamation point at the very end. So he's a fucking psycho. He's so stupid. He's trying to make it sound nice, but he just goes off into insanity land. So, John McCain. I'm going to start just talking about his military record because he's such a great war hero. That's the reason why we listen to him when he says that we need to bomb Iran, bomb Iran, because that'd be so awesome, right? That would be so great if we bombed Iran. That would only eliminate humanity if that was to have happened. So John McCain was never met a war he didn't like. He was always pushing for war. He's a neocon, a right-wing neocon, warmonger, psycho. He was one of the biggest war hawks in the government. Okay. So let's talk about him being a war hero, right? That's the general picture of it, but I don't like him being using that idea of being a war hero in order to justify more war. He got tortured by the Vietnamese people, so now he wants an empire to take over the entire world so he never gets tortured ever again. So he's not a military war hero because he got shot down or because he got captured and tortured. He's a war hero because he endured 5 years of captivity and torture and lived to tell about it. That's the heroic part. He was a war hero because he lived to tell about it for 5 years, was in a POW camp, and then was able to come out. But actually, he didn't escape. He only was released because of Nixon's peace deal in '73. So he never ran away. He never escaped. He didn't do an Andy Dufresne thing like the Shawshank Redemption. He didn't crawl through a whole bunch of sewage and shit. He endured torture and abuse and solitary confinement, but it doesn't say about where he tried to, leave or run away. So he endured it, and he lived to tell about it. That's heroic, but getting captured isn't. It isn't. He also didn't win the Vietnam War. He fought in a war that lost, that the U.S. lost, like the war in Somalia. That was another war that lost. The War of 1812 is another war that the United States has lost. We are not perfect in our war records, and that's actually, it's not a bad thing. What would we have gained from Vietnam? So John McCain served in the U.S. military. Some history: he graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1958. He followed his father and his grandfather, both who were 4-star admirals in the U.S. Navy. So he's privileged. He followed his father and grandfather, but that's a legacy that he was following. So he was a naval aviator. He flew ground-attacked aircraft from aircraft carriers during the Vietnam War. He was almost killed in the 1967 USS Forrestal fire. This was an aircraft carrier on the USS Forrestal. The Forrestal fire. There was an accident, apparently an accident. Somebody was either trying to wet start their plane so they can hurry up and just jump right off the carrier, or there was an electrical thing that just, skitzed out for no apparent reason and then fired a rocket into John McCain's plane. So John McCain is very much in front and center of the 1967 USS Forrestal fire. He thought that he had actually pushed it or did something that had caused it. He thought that he himself had caused the thing. And then when he didn't think that he caused it, then he had thought that he was the first plane that got attacked, but it was actually the plane next to him that got attacked first. And then it set off this chain of events. So I'm going to talk about the Forrestal fire here in a second. John McCain is a war hero because he assisted in the wholesale slaughter of 4 million Vietnamese people because they didn't like the capitalist system, because they didn't want to be capitalist. And this is what really pissed John McCain off, right? He looked at the policy of his leadership and he said, you know what? If anybody, if these Vietnamese people don't want to be, and actually he didn't call them Vietnamese people, if they don't want to be career chasing, always scroungy, greedy ass capitalist pigs, then John McCain needed to go kill as many of them as he could possibly kill, at least 4 million of them. And so that was the Vietnam War. And I don't actually think he thought about any of that stuff, but that's the policies that he was implementing. He was implementing an anti-communist domino theory, fucking dumb bullshit. There's two main economic theories in this world, and, you know, Vietnam didn't want to be capitalist. So that's why we were in Vietnam. John McCain is not a military war hero because he survived the July 29th, 1967 USS Forrestal bombing. The USS aircraft carrier, the USS Forrestal, 133 Americans were killed on that day. That was either caused or not caused by John McCain. There's two main theories. Here's the general facts. July 29th, 1967, a fire broke out on board the aircraft carrier, the USS Forrestal. An electrical anomaly caused a Zuni rocket on a McDonnell Douglas F-40 and F-4B Phantom to fire, striking the external fuel tank of a A-4 Skyhawk. The flammable jet fuel spilled across the flight deck, ignited, and triggered a chain reaction of explosions that killed 134 sailors and injured 161. 134 sailors were killed. At the time, USS Forrestal was engaged in combat operations in the Gulf of Tonkin during the Vietnam War. The ship survived, but with damage exceeding $72 million, not including the damage to the aircraft. Future U.S. Senator John McCain and future four-star Admiral and U.S. Pacific Fleet Commander Ronald J. Zlautopper were among the survivors. Lieutenant Tom Trianor returned to the ship as its commander and retired as an admiral. Okay, so that's what happened with the USS Forrestal bombing. He was a part of that. 134 sailors were killed. He survived it, right? He survived it. And either he was a hapless victim that had the plane next to him got shot and started this, domino effect, right? What's up with always a domino effect, right? Or there's a theory that John McCain was horsing around, tried to wet started or tried to do something, yelling at somebody to do something, got mad in a haste, and then did something stupid, and then just, everybody started getting blown up. So those are the two possible theories. John McCain thought John McCain did it. And then later on, it was, he was told that he didn't do it. So, and he was also privileged. So a cover-up is possible. Nobody was blamed. An electrical anomaly is what is being blamed on. So, well, I guess the airplane did it by itself. The airplane just shorted out by itself for no apparent reason and just started bombing this shit out of the USS Forrestal. So that's friendly. 134 Americans were killed by friendly fire, by a stupid-ass accident, by horseplay, or by some crazy possessed electrical grid on some airplane. So John McCain isn't a hero because he flew too low and he tore down a bunch of electrical lines in Spain. He was known as McNasty when he was younger. He was known as kind of being a maverick flyboy. So he had gone in Spain, created this international incident. He was cowboying it up, right? Having a good old time, killing goose. Poor Goose. In the movie, right? So in Spain, that incident just tells me that he's kind of wild and crazy. We weren't at war with Spain, but he was flying over Spain. They allowed us to fly over and then he is taking out electrical lines. So he's not a war hero because he did that. He sparked an international incident and almost, caused a war between a country we didn't even want to go to war with. Spain? Why did he attack Spain? John McCain is a war hero because his POW status was publicized. So by the very reporters and media and peaceniks McCain detested. So during the Vietnam War, it was known that John McCain, the son of a lieutenant, corporal, admiral, whatever, a very important naval officer, was captured by the Viet Cong, i.e. the Vietnamese people, and was being tortured. His picture was in the paper. It was being reported. And then the Viet Cong had got John McCain to denounce America and the war, and then he always hated him because he felt like he betrayed not his country, but he betrayed himself because he always thought that he could just endure no matter what. So John McCain's a war hero because he fought in the Vietnam War. We're not mad at John McCain for following his nation's policies because John McCain was just but a lowly soldier. He was only fighting in Vietnam to help his nation get some freedom or make them capitalist or what the fuck ever. But essentially, he was doing his nation's bidding. He was just a soldier. And that's the reason he's a hero, just because he served. All American soldiers, whether they did anything heroic or not, are just automatically heroes, just cuz. John McCain wasn't responsible for which enemies the leaders of his country picked. It wasn't up to John McCain to reason why, but to fight and die. The Vietnam War belongs to LBJ's, Nixon's, JFK's, and Truman's heads. They were the ones who carried this evil, wicked, and failed plot out. So give credit where credit is due. We don't want to overinflate John McCain, a war hero. He's not a war hero. He's not a true war hero who actually did something heroic. He's not even really a good person, let alone being a war hero that actually did something. So he fought in a war that we lost, and he got captured in '67 and then was, held captured for 5 years. And he denounced America during this capture. Was it aired? Did the American people hear how John McCain thought the U.S. involvement in Vietnam was evil, wicked, and a losing tactic? I mean, it's not a great soldier nor a great war. And then he's fanning the peacenik, flames at home. They're looking at this soldier who says, you know what, the involvement is bullshit. And I don't know how convincing he was, but they could be like, hell, look, even this soldier is saying it's bullshit. Now, if he's, by his captures, of course, he's being tortured into saying this stupid shit. And, I guess I don't totally hate people that go along with the thing, but, I don't know. John McCain, he is a war hero because when John McCain was released, or when he could have been released. Now, this is one time. There's a second time he's being released and he just leaves everybody. But he elected to stay with his band of brothers. So he could have been released earlier, but he said, no, I'm going to stay with everybody else. Maybe he did that once. But when John McCain was released, he actually left his band of brothers because the Viet Cong gave us, this was after the peace deal. He gets released in 1973 in March. So the peace deal was in January of 73. Kissinger and Nixon signed a peace agreement in Paris 2 months prior to John McCain being released. And so it was a POW prisoner exchange was part of the agreement. So part of getting out of the war, which was the peaceniks and the anti-war protesters that put the pressure on Nixon. He just actually ran against George McGovern, who was very much against the war. And so the Viet Cong gave us our POWs back, and then we gave their POWs back. So it was a POW exchange in the order that they were captured. So John McCain was one of the first to be captured, so he was one of the first to be released. So this thing is actually, I think, is important because that's the only heroic thing, really, that out of his war record that I see that he did. He might have bombed some missions or whatever and killed a bunch of people, and, great for him doing that. But it was a losing war, and overall, he was on the wrong side of history, which is what he said about the Confederate flag when he flip-flopped on the Confederate flag. So John McCain, the biggest most heroic thing that he actually did was that he elected to stay with his brothers when he could have been released early. Now, when he gets released, he's going to get released in 1973, March 28th. March 28th. No, the rest would be released March 28th, 1973. He was released March 14th, 1973. So he was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years. He was released March 14th, 1973, just 2 months or 1.5 months after the Nixon-Kissinger peace agreement that Kissinger would win a Nobel Peace Prize for January 1973. January 27th, 1973 was the peace agreement. So when he was released, March 14th, 1973, there was 178 other American POWs who were left behind. This is according to a New York Times article. The rest, right, for some reason they were doing them in pieces. He was one of the first to be released, and 178 Americans were still left behind. And apparently they said that he tried to stay behind, but they're like, nope, you must go. So, the prisoner exchange, that's kind of like the Bergdahl, Guantanamo Bay prisoner swap, that deal, right, that Obama did, that the conservatives were freaking out about. Now, McCain, he continued to actively resist the propaganda of the Viet Cong, but he also didn't want to give the peaceniks their day. He loved the Christmas bombing, even though we didn't get a better deal because of it. Just 5 months prior, the same deal was on the table, so the Christmas bombing of December 1972 was pointless. It was just Nixon being a sadistic fucking psycho. And they liked it because they were prisoners or whatever, but they're still prisoners. So I can understand him liking it during that period of time. But John McCain is going to be released because of the anti-war movement, because of Kissinger making that deal, because of George McGovern running against Richard Nixon, because of the Weather Underground people, the people that put pressure. Nixon said the pressure from below was getting to him. He admits to this. So this is not the one heroic thing John McCain did. He didn't even do. He didn't even, I mean, he did, but what kind of heroic? He didn't save his people, right? Her hero would be the one who won the war. The hero would be the one who went into the prisoner camp and then rescued all of them. So I guess Nixon and Kissinger, who perpetuated the damn war, are the heroes. They're the heroes now, right? So John McCain had left the Americans too. So he maybe said, no, I'll stay behind. They're like, no, you must go. And then he was like, oh, okay. No, I want to stay with you guys and all, but I gotta go. I gotta go back to America and not eat these worms and dirt and whatever the fuck it is they're doing. So that's important to understand. So he's not really a war hero. John McCain isn't really a war hero whatsoever. He served. And I don't think we should just hate him because he served, but it was in a losing war, and he really needs to have a heart-to-heart talk with himself about what his role was in that war, and hopefully get some counseling. He definitely needed some help. George W. Bush was right that the torture did make him go fucking nuts. It made him go crazy. It made him just want to oppress the entire world. He got tortured, and how dare anybody ever torture John? Even if he went into your country and was invading your country, and the Vietnamese were defending their country like the Americans defended, like we defended our country with the British occupation. So we're going to hate them for defending their own country like we defended our country during the Revolution? And right now, there's a whole bunch of things that John McCain, he's a war hawk. He's a war hawk, bomb Iran, right? So he said he wanted to stay in Iraq for 100 years, 10,000, maybe even a million years. John McCain said we should stay in Iraq for 1 million fucking years. He didn't give a shit. He's not a war hero because he got his nation stuck in Iraq. He pushed us into Iraq, along with George W. Bush. There's been over 1 million deaths in that forever war on terrorism in Iraq alone. And there's, i.e., the war for permanent American empire. It wasn't about terrorism. Remember the 9/11? You remember what happened on 9/11? We were bombed by, the Saudi Arabians, and then we were bombed by 15 of them were Saudi Arabians, 2 were United Arab Emirates, one's Egyptian, and then the other is a Lebanese. There's 19. So, not Iraqis, not a single fucking Iraqi attacked us on 9/11, but John McCain, he turned his sights to Iraq just days after 9/11, became a leading supporter of an invasion and occupation of a country that had absolutely nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks, and as despicable as Saddam Hussein was, posed no imminent threat to the American people. Obama said August 19, 2008, two of the biggest beneficiaries of that decision were Al-Qaeda's leadership, which no longer faced the pressure of America's focused attention, and Iran, which has advanced its nuclear program, continued its support for terror, and increased its influence in Iraq and the region. So McCain bear witness when he offered to sell weapons to Colonel Gaddafi at a private meeting with the Libyan dictator. And this is according to a State Department cable released by WikiLeaks. So he didn't, when he was trying to sell weapons to Gaddafi, he didn't really push the human rights issue with Gaddafi in person with any verve. He didn't really say, hey, why don't you quit torturing your own. He didn't give a shit, right? He's also allies with Saudi Arabia. The Saudis donated $1 million to the McCain Institute at Arizona State University. So he's, doesn't restrict the sale. He helped to block a bipartisan attempt in the Senate to restrict the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia. So we're still selling to Saudi Arabia, and there's a Yemeni genocide going on right now. That country there's 27 million Yemenis right now. 50 kids were killed by America's bombs this month. Does anybody give a shit? August 9th, 2018, 44 Yemeni children were bombed by American bombs. And American empire's cover of Saudi Arabia's crimes. 35,000 have been total. 35,000 total have been killed since 2015. So he's not a war hero. He didn't save the troops. He didn't fight for his troops. He didn't win the battles. He didn't win the war. He just was captured, like, whatever. I mean, he had to endure the, captivity and the torture, and it had to be excruciating. But he didn't win. He didn't win nothing. Like a hapless victim, he's just waiting for daddy to come save him, and then eventually he was saved. But the heroic part, just because he served, I think that, give credit where credit is due. He did elect to stay back one time with his boys, and then he did serve in the army, which Trump and George W. and a lot of them didn't do, but it was Vietnam, so there's actually courage to be Muhammad Ali, too, to be against the Vietnam War, just as there was courage to be for it. So I guess I just don't like the stories of us like spitting on the troops when they come back. But they were the ones initiating, enforcing the policies of the leadership. So who's to blame? Bush could just say he was just talking. Why the hell did y'all kill everybody? I was just talking, and I talked to the TV, and everybody went along with this, and then you all went around killing people. Or Nixon, or LBJ, they could all just plead ignorance. Well, we didn't know what they were doing. We didn't know what they were up to. John McCain loved when Israel would assault Gaza in 2014. And in 2015, he says we shouldn't support a Palestinian bid for statehood. So fuck the Palestinians. That's John McCain. John McCain says fuck the Palestinians. No, fuck you, John McCain. We need to treat people like people. Stop the occupation. Stop the oppression. Stop the violence. The empire doesn't help me. The empire doesn't help the working class people. Give it to the United Nations. All the empire is doing is it's putting America all over the place. 900 military bases in 150 countries, and we're killing people. We're wasting our money, wasting our treasure. For every bomb that we send out there, we're taking foods out of the mouth of our children, books out of the hands of our kids, health care away from our people. We have poverty here. 15% very poor, and about 100, but 1/3 of the American people are near poverty. There's homelessness. There's police brutality. There's the war on drugs. All that shit's still going on. So he left us this nation. We could actually judge John McCain by the circumstances that's going on right now. He was in power for a long ass time. How come, we got a lot of these major institutionalized problems? Well, he's pushing for empire. I guess that'll be his fucking legacy. He was Mr. Empire. He got fucking tortured and beat up, and he wasn't a great war hero whatsoever, but he used the fake, because he served war hero bullshit, and turned that around to turn the entire United States of America into one big-ass revenge killing machine for what those Viet Cong did to him 50 years ago in defense of their own nation. So his policies on a whole bunch of stuff, on Russia, on a whole bunch of shit. It just, every time every war, he would push war any place that he thought that he could push war for whatever reason. Yemen right now is on the brink of extinction. There's 27 million Yemenis right now. 50 kids were bombed. Nobody's going to give a shit. Nobody's going to say something. So the bombing's going to carry on. That's going to continue. 35,000 is just a number that I found. If we're killing kids, wantonly, without nobody saying shit about it, this is a forever war. He got us into a forever war. This war is more important than the Revolution and the Civil War and the World War II. All those wars combined, because it's longer. We've been going on this forever war for 17 years. Forever war on terror, bullshit. War for American empire. So if you agree with the American empire, I guess you would love John McCain. But I just feel like when it comes to war, World War II, we gave the authority of war to the United Nations. If we're invaded and the United Nations, for whatever reason, doesn't go along with that, okay, we got to, buck the United Nations. But the United Nations is there to make sure one nation doesn't invade another nation, which was Hitler's crime. He went into Czechoslovakia. He went into Poland. One country cannot invade another sovereign nation. That's what the United Nations was designed to do. And the United Nations was against our invasion. They wanted to investigate and come to a decision. So yeah, if you're for the empire, you would love John McCain. I'm not for the empire. I don't think the empire helps me whatsoever. You're sending a lot of these, fuck boys all over, these jump-off fuck boys, and maybe they're doing a good job, or maybe they're killing a bunch of innocent people. Donald Trump is at the helm right now, and what does Donald Trump represent in the United States? Donald Trump represents the elite. He represents Goldman Sachs. He represents the 1%. Yeah, draining the swamp. Get rid of the rich plutocrats running the government now to get his rich plutocrats to run the government. So he's for oil barons and the wealthy and the rich. He can't wait to get into the Wall Street Club. He can't wait. Now he's the man, right? Now he's the main show. So he's finally got to where he wants to be. But in the United States, he says wages are too high. He doesn't really give a shit about working class people or unions or the soldiers. So he doesn't care about the actual people in our own country. And I'm supposed to trust that the 20 wars that we're engaged in, shadow wars in Africa, that Donald Trump is doing a good job over there? I will not assume he's doing a good job. Who would assume that? Oh, Donald Trump invaded Nigeria. Don't worry, he's got it taken care of. Okay, guess we'll just trust Donald Trump will execute these wars all by himself. We didn't even, Baby Bush couldn't even execute one war, let alone 20 wars. So those are the two main things that I want. When I think about John McCain, he started out with his career helping the slaughter of 4 million Vietnamese people, whom he still calls gooks up until the day he died, 81 years. He still called the Vietnamese that we invaded gooks, because how dare they defend themselves, and called the Vietnamese people gooks until he died, and he pushed us into the Iraq War. So he started his career by helping the slaughter of 4 million Vietnamese, and then he ended his career by killing 1 million Iraqi people. So always with the genocides. John McCain, always with the genocides. Everybody's rushing to defend John McCain. Donald Trump just made a comment about shooting somebody in Fifth Avenue. If Donald J. Trump would have killed one person in Fifth Avenue, well, he would have actually killed 4,999,999 less people than the people that John McCain helped kill. How many personally did John McCain kill? I don't know. He ran around doing those bombing campaigns. So hundreds, thousands. He probably killed hundreds and thousands of those gooks, right? He had to hate those gooks to start just bombing them for no reason. They didn't even pose any threat to him, but he didn't mind it. He was, trying to do his dad proud. So when he was messing with Gaddafi, selling weapons, didn't care about the human rights thing, doesn't mind bombing the shit out of Palestine. He was against the Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King, probably the Jesus Christ of our times, he didn't even want to give him a day. There's nobody, Gandhi and Martin Luther King are like tops, right? You can't really get any better than those two. John McCain didn't see the greatness that is Martin Luther King Jr. So John McCain's a piece of shit, but I just wanted to talk about his war record. I just wanted to get it precise. He wants us to stay in Iraq for 1,000,000 years, right? Well, he is a hero, right? Because he served, and because he went back that one time and said, no, I'm not going to be released. But he's not a hero because he dropped bombs on innocent people. He's not a hero because he participated in a genocide and then started another genocide when he got into politics. That is not a hero. Sorry, I like my war heroes who don't participate in the wholesale murder of an entire nation of peoples. And it's not a conflict. It was a Vietnam War. So I don't even want to hear the conservative fucking talking point that it was just a conflict over there in Vietnam. So immediately after 9/11, pushes Iraq. We need to expand the empire for whatever fucking reason, exploit the shit out of 9/11, and he got his fucking war. So no, war hero is somebody who saves people, who saves the innocent people. A war hero is not somebody who drops bombs on the innocent people. So So no, John McCain is not a war hero, not in any kind of sense, barely any kind of sense. And his war policy is atrocious. You could put 5 million lives, you could put 1 million Iraqi lives on him. He was very much pushing the Iraq war. He was one of the biggest war hawks out there. And then, you know, a couple hundred or thousand Vietnamese, how many people he killed in Vietnam before he got captured. So maybe he just killed a couple, you know, dozen or something. But I'm sure he killed, you know, a handful. So, fuck John McCain.